My name's Frank Zacarri, and this is Life Altering Events. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about the power of a positive mind. Now, when things are going well, having a positive mind is easy. But what happens when the flip side starts, when things start to unravel? We constantly feel run down. Kids get sick. One nagging illness hangs on after another. We cannot seem to get it together. Then things turn serious. We have a death of a loved one. The child has major surgery. We discover that a nagging illness is a life-threatening disease that requires an organ transplant. And that organ transplant never seems to come. There are many surgeries that come, and we're left and we're given the last rites multiple times. This is a difficult situation, ladies and gentlemen. Very few people have the physical, mental, and emotional capability to handle this kind of strain. Then there are people like my guest, Robert Willis. He's endured all of these issues and more, yet he remains probably the single most positive, uplifting, and inspirational person I have ever met. He is one of those rare people who never gives up and never gives in. And when you meet him and when you talk to him, you leave feeling better about yourself and your situation. Now, I can't do his story justice, so let me bring in my friend, Robert Willis. Robert, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
Now, Robert, let's start back when you're 19 years old.
Okay.
A 2-year mission, and then something happens. Tell us what that was.
Well, first of all, when I went on my mission back in October 1984, I was in really good condition. I had been playing sports up to that point, and no physical ailments of any kind. Great condition, and everything was going well leading up to the end of the year of 1984. Around February of 1985, I started getting sick. And at first, I thought it was the flu. I was weak, achy feeling, fever, really tired. So I told myself I was going to give myself about a week just to get rest, and that was all. And come to find out, it was getting worse and not better. Mm-hmm. So I went to the doctors several times, and they tried to give me a couple of penicillin shots to see if that would work, and that didn't work. Then they tried to give me antibiotics and more rest, and that didn't work. And as each prescription was failing, I was getting more and more sick. It got to a point where my neck really swelled up, and I was so weak that I could barely stand. If I was able to stand for a couple minutes, I would end up fainting and falling. I would have horrible fevers to the point where I'd wake up in the morning and my sheets would just be soaked from my fever breaking. So finally, one of the doctors admitted me to a very small hospital in one of the villages in the state of Montana. Mm-hmm. And I was there for about 2 weeks while they ran tests. And everything came back that I was really sick, that my white blood cells were really high. And the doctor finally came into my room and said, "There's nothing that we could do for you. This is a really small hotel, or not a hotel, excuse me, hospital. And we don't have the means and the medical equipment to have you see it through and to get better. So we're going to transfer you to a Mercy General Hospital in a bigger city in Montana." So the ambulance came and they transported me over there. I got admitted, and I went and saw the surgeon that was going to be looking after me. And this was a very surreal moment at this time, where he called me to his office and he interviewed me, asked me different questions pertaining to my health, my family's health, how long I'd been sick, just different details. Mm-hmm. And he paused in the interview and he asked if he could go get another doctor or two to get a second opinion. And I said, of course. Well, to my surprise, he brought in 7 different doctors.
7.
So I was sitting on the table there, Yeah, I was sitting on the table there counting one by one from all the way around, starting from my right, and there was 8 doctors, and each one of them stepped forward and examined me. You know, they wanted to look at my neck. They had me turn my head a couple of different ways and looked me over and then step back. Then the next doctor stepped up. And it went like that all the way around with 8 different doctors, you know. And finally, they stepped out of the room to consult with my regular surgeon. And he came back after they left and he said, well, right now, it looks like you're dealing with non-Hodgkin's disease lymphoma, which is a form of cancer.
Sure. Right.
And, you know, I was 19 years old at the time, far away from home in another state here in Montana rather than California. And when you hear that word cancer, it really opens your eyes.
Yes.
You know, it's a wake-up call. And after that, the doctor proceeded to run tests on me. And then he said that they're going to do a surgery. And they're going to bring in a specialist to cut along my neck. And they're going to take out part of a lymph node to treat it and test it. So they did that, you know, the surgery went well, and I was back in the room, and come to find out, they took out a whole lymph node. And the doctor said we needed to take that out because it was completely scorched with infection. So they went ahead and treated that with different types of medicine, and they found the right antibiotic that killed it. And they gave that to me intravenously. And then after about 2 weeks, I started getting better. My appetite was coming back. My health was coming back. I was getting stronger. So it didn't last very long after that. And I would say probably about another 2 weeks after that, they discharged me. And I went back into the mission field. I had lost a lot of weight. When I went in, I was about 155, and I came out about like 120.
Wow.
You know, and all my clothes were hanging on me. You know, all my missionary friends, they were calling me grandpa because they were just so loose on me. But I had made a vow and a promise to myself that when I was going to return back to California, I was going to be in better shape than I was when I came into the mission field. And slowly but surely I did that. I served in one area where a lot of Montana people, they go to Arizona for the winter. And one of the families asked me and my other missionary friend if we could go and house sit for him throughout the wintertime. And we said, right. Yeah, it'd be a great opportunity. And this particular house had a huge, huge basement. Basements there in Montana are like studio apartments in right. California. They're just huge. And I was able to go down there, and they had, I had to kind of make up my own exercise routine. There was a broomstick there, and I went ahead and broke off the head of the broomstick and just had the stick itself. And then I went to the store, and I bought 2 gallons of milk and finished those off, and then poured sand into them. So both of them were filled with sand. And then I went ahead and duct taped them to each end of the broomstick. And I didn't have a weight bench, so I used an old piano bench. And I sat there on the bench, lay down, and that's where I did my exercises. And I'd get up about 4:30 in the morning and go down there and do that for about like an hour each day. You know, and finally that time came in April 1986, where I boarded the plane to go back home, and I had reached my goal. I was in far better shape at that point going home than I was when I got to Montana.
Now, your parents stayed in California during all this. They were aware of what was going on, correct?
Yes. In fact, the doctor that was working on me, he was keeping in touch with them, giving them details, you know, each day and weekly.
Wow, that'd be frightening for you as a 19-year-old, and it had to be
Yeah,
horrifying for your parents.
yeah, they really wanted to come out, but the doctor said, it'd be best that they stay here in California and that he would keep them updated. And there was a thought that would come in that they would put me on a plane and fly me to California. But that was quickly turned down because they said I was so sick that I would never be able to make it. I wouldn't have lasted through the
The
plane trip.
flight. Wow, that's incredible. That alone is an incredible story.
I know.
And so you find your way through. You finish the mission. You go
Yes,
back
sir.
home, and I understand things are going pretty well. And then in the summer of 2007, you meet a friend. You're working, and she suggests, "Hey, Robert, you need to see a doctor." How'd that meeting come about, and what happened?
Well, at that time, I was working two jobs. I was working for a law firm during the day. I'd say from like 7 to 4, and then I'd run over to the hotel and I managed the hotel at night. And this particular friend of mine, she she had a band. It was like a jazz band that they'd come into the lounge every Thursday and perform.
Mm-hmm.
And she would have to check in with me first, being that I was the manager at night. So we got to know each other and be really good friends. Well, I noticed that I was getting a little bit tired, but I just thought that I was just being overworked.
Right.
And she came to me one Thursday evening and she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." So she pulls me aside and she says, "You know what? I'm going to be really honest with you." And she says that I'm really worried about you. And it kind of, it really struck me by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Why is that?" And she said that your skin tone color is really yellow and your eyes are really yellow. And that's a sign of a sickened liver.
Mm-hmm.
That your liver, you're getting jaundice. Your liver
Right.
is not functioning correctly. And at first in my mind, I was thinking, okay, how does she know all this stuff?
Right.
She's like a
She's a
jazz
jazz
singer.
singer.
So then she said, that my jazz singing with my band is just a hobby of mine. I'm a nurse at Sutter Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, "I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to go get blood tested as soon as you can." And by the seriousness of the tone of her voice, it really took me back.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her I would definitely follow through with that. So I waited a couple of days till my day off. And at that time, I was just getting sicker and sicker. So I just barely crawled into an emergency room at one of the local hospitals here in Sacramento. And this was around 11 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And the emergency room was just packed. And I had to wait my turn. And so finally, like around 9 o'clock at night, they brought me in to check my vital signs. And then they took me back and did a bunch of blood work. And then I went back and there was no chairs available in the emergency room. So I pretty much sat and lay down on the floor. I was just that exhausted. So they brought me in and told me the results of the blood test. And they said that it showed that my liver enzymes were just sky high. And they attributed that to that I was overworked. They asked me what I did, how many hours I worked a day. And they said, it'd be best if you stayed home for about a week and just got a lot of rest. And, eventually that would go away and get better. So I did that. In fact, I went ahead and resigned from my one job working at the law firm, and I just had the evening job at the hotel. I thought that would give me enough rest. Well, a week later, I was getting worse. I felt worse. I was getting sicker, lost an appetite. Just it was really bad. So I went back there and it was the same thing. Went in there about 11 o'clock in the morning at the emergency. They got me in there about, I don't know, 9 o'clock to run my vital signs and check them. And then about 10:30, they came to me and said, you're really sick and we're going to put you on a gurney. And we're going to admit you, but we just don't have any open rooms right now. So, just lay here and rest, and we're going to find a room available for you, and we're going to admit you. So about 11 o'clock at night, that same night, they admitted me into one of the rooms there in the hospital. And I called my folks and let them know about that. And then the following morning, I called my job and told my boss about the situation. And they're very understanding about that. Very. So a team of doctors came in and told me that I was going to be their patient. They were going to look after me.
Mm-hmm.
So they sat there and they asked me questions about my background, medical background, and different questions that gave them more information about what I was going through. So they told me that they're not going to rule out anything. They said that they know that something's wrong with my liver because of the liver enzymes, but they don't know what was causing it. So they were going to find that out. And they even said, we're not ruling out anything. Right now, it could be liver cancer, just to let you know. So for like the next 3 weeks, they ran all kinds of tests. They did biopsies, tons of blood work, everything that you could imagine. And then that day came where quite a few of them walked into my hospital room, and they told me that I had a stage 3 liver disease.
Oh my God.
And they said that it was really sick and that I was going to be taking medicine for the rest of my life. So there was a part of me that I'd never really been sick before outside of on my mission.
Mm-hmm.
So that took me by surprise, them saying I had a really diseased liver and that I'd be taking prescriptions for the rest of my life. So they ran all kinds of tests, and come to find out it was diagnosed as an acute liver disease. That was an autoimmune deficiency. And what that is that one's body, the white blood cells that fight off infection, get turned around and start thinking that one's organs are an infection, and they start attacking that. And that's what happened with my liver, was the autoimmune deficiency. So they gave me prescriptions, and I started taking them. They discharged me, I don't know, about a month later. And then everything went fine, went back to work for about a year. And then I had a relapse a year later. Mm-hmm. And usually when a relapse happens, that's more harsh on the liver than the initial attack. So right away I was rushed to the hospital, and they told me, that my liver is in really bad condition. At this point, it's at a stage 4 liver disease rather than a stage 3. So I pretty much had to change my lifestyle and what I was eating, drinking, exercise, getting enough sleep, everything. So I would say that was back in 2008. Mm-hmm. So for, no, it wasn't 2008. It was, I guess it was about like 2008. Mm-hmm. And for about 3 years, I was doing pretty good up to about like 2010. I was working full time. I was coaching basketball. I mean, I felt great. I was even participating in practices with my team. Mm-hmm. I felt that good. And then slowly but surely, I started getting sick again. I was retaining a bunch of water in my legs and ankles. It was so bad that the doctors gave me a medical release to stop from working. And I sat there and rested. And I was able to maintain that for a little while. But then I say about 9 months later, my liver started getting sick again. And around the latter part of October 2017, it started getting really, really sick, to where I was rushed to another hospital here in Sacramento, and they did all that they could. And they have a contract with a transplant hospital in San Francisco, UCSF. And they made room for me to be hurried over there to be in line for a liver transplant. Now, that all comes to a point where if you have a donor that is a family member that has the same blood type, liver tissue type, and liver torso size. I mean, somebody was like 6 foot and I'm 5'5", there's no way that they could fit a liver inside of me, you know? So unfortunately, I didn't have a family member that was a complete match. So I had to wait for somebody that would die, that was a deceased person that had the same type of blood type and liver size and liver tissue.
Wow. Now, I understand, Robert, you were on this list for 3 years. 3 years. And what's that like when you know if they can't find something, you're going to die? What was that waiting like?
I mean, it's a wake-up call. You know, you do a lot of thinking back and reflecting on the life that you lived up to that point. And you think on everything that you got done, but everything that you still want to do. You know, I had 2 small kids. You know, I wanted to watch them grow up and get married and be very happy. You know, and but I didn't let my mind be overwhelmed with that line of thinking, because I always was with the line of thinking that what is it that I can do next to get myself into a better situation with my health. So I never really laid back and thought, you know, poor me or woe is me. My line of thinking was, okay, what can I do next? You know, what's the next step that I could accomplish and get myself closer to that transplant and closer to health? So I took that approach, and that seemed to help me, you know, and keep me going until it was time for the transplant.
Now, the transplant story, from what you told me, was pretty interesting. They think they had one, they rush you back to the hospital. What was that experience like?
Well, when you go into a transplant organ hospital, they could only keep you in there for 5 days because they're taking a chance on you catching something else and getting even more sick and, you know, maybe even passing at that point or dying. So they're very regimented upon that. So I got there. There was a team of liver transplant specialists that would come into my room every day and let me know the chances of them finding a liver. So every day for 5 days, they came in there and said, you know, we haven't found anything yet, but keep your fingers crossed. You know, something's going to happen. Well, during that time, it was really interesting that medically speaking, they were starting off with this new system where in the past, they would put an organ and pack it in ice. And when it was time for the transplant, they would put it into the patient's body. But there was a high percentage of the body rejecting it because they kept the body, you know, warm. But yet they put in this cold organ into the body, and it was hard for the body to acclimate itself to that.
Right.
So they had this new system. It looks like an ice chest, but they have like wires in it and like a grill. It's almost like a barbecue. But they put an organ on there, and then they put these wires in it that make like it's still pumping or still working inside this, I don't know, for lack of a better term, ice chest / barbecue. And it kept it warm body temperature. So that's why my body acclimated itself to the liver so quickly. But
Mhm.
leading up to that, every day the doctors were coming in and said they haven't found anything yet. So the very last day, they told me that they couldn't find anything, that they're really sorry. This was in the evening on the 5th day.
Mhm.
They said they're really sorry and that it would be best if I called home and packed up all of my stuff and have my family pick me up and to take me back home. You couldn't do
Mhm.
anything for me. And luckily, I was in a room by myself because I crashed. Uh, if there was ever a point where I hit rock bottom, it was that day.
Mhm.
And that was the second time that I've heard that from doctors. I heard that back on my mission when I was 19, back in 1985. They couldn't do anything for me. So it was, needless to say, it was a very long day. And I did a lot of praying. A lot of it was a heart to heart talk with God on which way I was going to go and how I was going to turn out. And I had hope that was just hanging by a thread. I fell asleep about 2 in the morning, and about 5 in the morning, nurses and doctors came running into my room and asked me if I heard the good news. And I just woken up. I didn't know what they were talking about. And I thought they were talking about some political announcement on the news. So they said, no. They said, we got you a new liver. They said, get ready, call everybody you know. Now, this is at 5 in the morning, mind you.
Mhm.
And they said, be prepared because in 3 hours, we're going to prep you and you're going to go in and get a new liver. So I did as they said. I called everybody I knew. Even if I woke them up, it didn't matter. Today, that morning was a morning of celebration, and I called my dad, I called my sisters, my fiance, I called everybody, and they were just so excited because they kind of went with me down this road of very bad health. I mean, I kept them up to date on it, and they kind of went along with me down that dark road.
Mhm.
So 3 hours later, doctors and nurses come in, they get me on the gurney, take me into OR. And a very surreal moment happened at that time when they pushed me into the OR. Just in the corner, there were 2 doctors, and there was these big, huge halogen lights up above them, and they were sitting there looking at something. And the nurse said, pointing over there, she said, "You know what they're looking at?" And I had the faintest idea. I thought it was some kind of medical tool or something. Well, come to find out, she said, "No, that's the liver that's going to be going inside you." And who can say that? Not very many people.
No, no.
You know, so so thankfully they put me under anesthesia, but they had a problem getting the surgery going. I guess one of the nurses, maybe a new one, they were putting shots or IVs in me, and they happened to prick my brachial artery in my left arm, and blood started spurting out, and they couldn't stop it. So they had to call in an emergency vascular team to come in and to stop it, sew it up, and then put like a skin glue covering over it. It delayed the surgery like 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Then the surgery took place, and I was out of there like, I don't know, about 6 hours later. Ended up in ICU.
So now you have a new liver.
Yeah.
And at that moment, there had to be a tremendous sense of relief, I'm sure. And then what happens? How did your body react?
Well, the relief came like 3 days later because I was in ICU and I was dying of thirst, but they wouldn't let me drink or eat anything.
Right.
So they were giving me ice chips. And I thought at that moment, whoever invented ice chips, they should have a holiday named after them. It was wonderful. So I had the ice chips that got me through. And what was kind of interesting is that more doctors came in wanting to take a look. They pricked the brachial artery rather than my liver, but I went ahead and finished the 3 days there in ICU. They put me back in the regular hospital room, and I was there for about, I'd say 3 weeks to a month.
Wow.
And I got better. And the doctors, even the surgeons, they were completely amazed how well my body took to the new liver, which really is a foreign organ to my body. A lot of times you're kind of up and down, trying to get used to that. But mine took it right away, and I didn't have any complications at that point from then on.
Wow.
Everything went very smoothly.
And
the doctors, they attributed that to that machine that they put it on as like a warmer, so to speak, rather than being just cold packed in ice. I really feel that had a lot to do with it.
It's amazing. Now, I understand you're recovering and you're going through this, and then you have 8 surgeries in a 2-year span from that point in time, 2 for skin cancer that was brought on by the harsh liver prescriptions. And then you kept defying the odds. What was that like?
Well, the 8 surgeries, the liver transplant was right in the middle. I had surgeries before that and surgeries after that. And they were all relative to a diseased liver. First off, I had a really, really bad infection in my left leg. So bad that the doctors were saying that they were going to amputate my left leg. And I was rushed into emergency. Luckily, it was over the weekend, and there's different doctors in different fields of medicine that cover the weekend emergency.
Right.
They rotate. Well, it just so happened that the one that was covering that weekend was a leg doctor. So he knew right what to do and how to take care of it. So I remember him, I was so out of it because I was in so much pain, but I remember his eyes were very big. And he looked at me and he started reading my rights. He asked me if I had an advance directive made out. He asked if I had a power of attorney. He asked if I had family members that would be within 15 minutes to come and identify my body. I mean, it was just very straightforward. He wasn't holding anything back. And his seriousness caught my attention. So I answered his questions, directly. And he told me, he said, "This may hurt, but I'm going to put a needle in your kneecap and drain some fluid." And I said, "All right." So obviously he shot my kneecap with a bunch of paint shots. And then he put the big needle in there, and that needle was big. I mean, I thought it was going to come out through the other end. It looked so long and big, and he kept on pushing it deeper and deeper, extracted a bunch of fluid, put me into a room, tested it, and it was a highly infectious fluid. He told me that it was on a Friday that I was admitted. If I would have came in on a Sunday, I would have died because that infectious fluid would have went into my bloodstream, into my heart, and into my lungs. Yeah. So I had 2 emergency knee surgeries. I had one that night at 11 o'clock at night. And I was so out of it that I woke up about 1 o'clock the next afternoon. And the first thing I did, even though I was groggy, was I felt to see if my leg was still there. And it was. So it was a slight celebration. But then the doctor came in and said, "Well, we're not out of the woods yet. We have to have another emergency knee surgery for you tonight." Well, The first surgery, I begged him. Even when I was on the operating table, I lifted my head up before they started giving me anesthesia, and I begged him and promised him to please save my leg, that I would do anything and everything possible to strengthen it if he were just to save my leg. I did that twice. The emergency surgery on Friday night and then on Saturday night. So same thing. Sunday afternoon, I woke up, felt my leg, it was there, and he came in. I thought, oh no, I hope this is good news. The doctor. And he took out almost 2 liters of infectious fluid out of my left leg.
Mhm.
And I had major cuts of surgery all over my left leg. And the reason why is because they had to drain that fluid quickly. It's just like if you have a watermelon and it's a really watery watermelon. If you make one slice in it, there's going to be water coming out. But if you make a bunch of slices, a bunch of water come out. And that's what they did. So I got through that, but during this time, I was bedridden for 2 months. So I had to be transported to a physical rehab center, and I stayed there for 2 months to learn how to walk again. So that was another obstacle for me to get through. And I made a promise to myself that when they discharged me, I wasn't going to go out on a wheelchair or a walker or a gurney, but I was going to walk out of there on my own. And sure enough, at that point, 2 months later, when they discharged me, I did walk out on my own. It was a major victory for me.
That is incredible. Now, Robert, I'm told one of the doctors, after reading your file, said that this is what I read, you're a medical miracle, and encouraged you to tell your stories to others. Now, what do you say? You're doing this now. You're having these talks all over. What do you say to people that are facing these life-threatening situations?
Just don't give up. It comes down to how bad you want it. It comes down to a mindset, and so I had to change my life in a bunch of different ways to accommodate me being healthy. And it wasn't easy, but I believe that once you set your heart and your mind into doing something, you can achieve that. It kind of goes with that saying, what the mind can believe, the body can achieve. And I'm a witness to that.
Mm-hmm.
I did it, but I tell you what, I have a lot of help from God. I mean, I'm scared and they would call me in, and I'd walk in and they say, "Hi, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, you called my name, Robert Willis, and I'm here to see you." And they look at me, and then they'd look at the file of my medical history. Then they'd look at me again, and they'd question me, "Are you sure you're Robert Willis?" And I said, "Yeah, I have my ID right here." They couldn't believe the turnaround that I did, and that how physically active I was, how I looked, how mentally alert that I was. They were blown away. The only way that they could put it was a medical miracle.
Now, I understand your health is good. You're working. You're giving these talks. You feel that this second chance in life is you're going to do everything possible.
Yes. Yes, sir.
That's outstanding. Well, Robert, we're just about out of time here. Ladies and gentlemen, the term hero is thrown around far too often. But in this case, it fits. Robert Willis is a hero in every sense of the word. He's a man who has truly found his calling and his purpose in life, which is to help make a difference in the lives of people in their darkest moments. Now, there are very few people who can do that. So, Robert, thank you so much for sharing this story with us. Robert was a guest on our radio show. 50,000 people listen to his story. So please watch this and feel this. You just feel this inspiration coming from him. Thank you again, Robert.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate it.
Now, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about out of time. No matter what life throws at you, and Mr. Willis has had a lot thrown at him, do 3 things. Look up, get up, and never, ever give up. Start moving forward, and better times and better people will come into your life. If you want more information about Robert, you can get him on his website or contact me, and I will make sure that it gets to him. You can see this on ROKU TV or on my YouTube page. And I will also send links to Robert when it airs, and he'll put it out on all his pages. Now, let me leave you with this, ladies and gentlemen, as I do every week. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Robert showed you where a lot of those rocks are. Join me again next week, and we talk about another life-altering event. Thank you.